Hey folks, in this interview, I sit down with Colombian photographer Juanita Escobar. Juanita and I discuss her work documenting life along the Orinoco River, which is a river that rides along the border of Venezuela and Colombia. This is Twitter. All right. Hey, Juanita, welcome to This Week in Photo. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hello. Thank you for the invitation, Frederick.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is really great. As we were talking about before I started recording, I'm really excited to do interviews with people that are doing real work in photography and using their cameras to not just for the sake of taking pretty pictures, but to actually tell stories. And that's what this interview is all about. So I'm excited to be doing this part of the Fuji series with you. You're based currently right now. You're in Colombia, and you're like we said in the intro, you're a photographer based in Colombia. Let's start with the beginning. So before we dive into the piece that you did around the Orinoco, let's talk about what led you to be a photographer. Why is Juanita a photographer right now?
I got in love in Cali. I started to work in cinema and films when I was 17 years old. Mm-hmm. I quit school and I had the great opportunity to join a group of cinema. And I continued the whole movie 2 months. So there I discovered this passion to tell stories with the camera and basically to tell stories. So after this movie, I joined all these people and I learned with them for the first years of my career. Then I decided to tell stories with the camera, but the first beginning was with cinema, documentary cinema.
Oh, really? Wow. So why the transition to still photos from cinema? Why not continue with motion?
For me, I wanted to be DP, a cinematographer, mm-hmm. Director of photography, and I was doing this path to training myself. So from the beginning, it was the camera, my field. But not just the photography department, but also I was very touched by the documentary. And I wanted to do documentary. But then I realized I was not very young, but I was 17. Then I realized that being among all these people and moving with such amount of people, it was not that easy and not that easy for me to find quick the satisfaction with the stories. I wanted to start, and for me it was easier to go to travel out of the cities and start with my own camera. And I had the opportunity to go and travel with a friend, a photographer, to do a work in the plains. So I was able to find myself just with the camera, and I preferred this loneliness and this intimacy. So as soon as I was doing this first assignment just with the camera, I decided that I preferred this instead of being with a big group of people working.
Yeah. Photography, depending on the genre of photography, it could be very solitary and therapeutic for a lot of people, where you just kind of go out by yourself and capture these stories. But like I read in the story that you published on photographer.com, the solitariness is an aspect that you have to be aware of, especially when you're doing stories like you did around the Orinoco River, right? It's not necessarily the safest environment. Can you tell us about just how that particular story came to be and what drove you to create it?
Yes. When I told you that I started very young here with the photography, I came to the plains of the Orinoco. It's a huge region, one of the 6 regions in Colombia. It's almost like Italy. So all the rivers goes to the Orinoco River, which is the biggest river in the region. So I arrived in 2007 to one part of this big region, but not to the Orinoco. So I started the first 8 years, let's say, to become a photographer, and through telling the stories of the llaneros, which are like the cowboys in America or the gauchos in Argentina. So I was working like with an anthropologist, going with them by horse with all these floodable savannas, and living with them by horse many years, and by river. So all the time the Orinoco, I was never been to the Orinoco, but all the time was a reference, a geographical reference and cultural reference. So all the time I wanted to go there. It was like a goal. Once arriving to the Orinoco, it was like an epic journey for me. Yeah. And I tried to go once, but by horse it was very complicated. So we just did like a 1 month of a trip, and we went back. So it was until 2015 that for the first time I arrived by boat, like in a 12 hours trip by the Meta River. And I arrived for the first time to the Orinoco. So it was not something, it was new because I was never been there, but it was like my goal always to arrive there.
Yeah. Right? What was that like when you got off? So a 12-hour journey on the boat, and then you arrived there. What was that like, having that been that being your goal for such a long time?
It was like a result, like if all these previous years was there same time, and giving like empowering this moment of being facing the Orinoco, which is like an enormous river, and all the myth that I had before, or the previous idea there, it was like more magnificent. And since the first day and since the first contact, I knew that I had to stay there and live there and explore this river. So yeah.
How long did you stay there and explore the river?
I came back 15 days ago.
Oh, just now. Okay, it's new.
Yeah, I'm still working there, and now here I am in Yopal. It's a small town at the plains. Yeah. So it's like the department is the next department next to the Vichada, which is where the Orinoco is. So I am in the same region, and I still living here.
Oh, it's sort of like the next town over, or the next area over.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so interesting. So describe for the people they're trying to get their brain around what that's like. So first of all, the 12-hour journey on the boat. How was that 12-hour journey? Was it, was it comfortable? Was it challenging, just making your way to the destination, or how to just describe how that went?
Yeah, there is a commercial line. To arrive to the Orinoco, there is no road trips, so the only way to arrive is by river, by the river. So these 12 hours is kind of comfortable, but you need to stop, like each time someone goes to the river side to ask or to take the boat. So you are stopping all the time and seeing all the people and the communities and the differences, because I was living in Orinoquia, where I took the boat.
Yeah.
And Orinoquia is a llanero town. It's a very different culture. So once you go further by the Meta River on the way to the Orinoco, you start to see the differences of the cultures, more indigenous, no?
Mm.
Because in the Orinoco region, there is like 9 different languages. So you by 12 hours, you start to see the difference of the population, and this is really really interesting because you notice that even if it's the same region, you are in a completely different world.
It's like a different world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's exciting. I want to transition into the story itself. So you spent, looking at the story that was on the fullblogger.com. They wrote that you traversed 330 kilometers out of 2,200 kilometers that span that border between Colombia and Venezuela. The like a day in the life of sort of moving in that environment with all the different languages. What is that like? And specifically, what are the sort of dangers that a photographer, specifically a female photographer, face while in that kind of environment?
Mhm. Mm, I always wanted to, not just the Orinoco was like the goal for me, but
Hmm.
Venezuela culture, because
Yeah.
the Janeiro culture that I just told you is a binational culture. It's not just in Colombia, it's Colombo Venezuelan culture.
Hmm.
So my favorite poets and regions and culture is this culture of both sides. So I identify myself also a lot with Venezuela, but I've never been. I just been in the board at the border. So when I was by boat, the 12 hours, you start after 7 hours. You start to see Venezuela. You start to be on the Venezuelan side. So this for me was really exciting, the way to at least arrive to this part. And when I arrived to Puerto Carreño, the capital city, from the Colombian side,
Hmm.
I realized that I had so much what to say, hope and need to be in the Venezuelan side, but it was really complicated. So this was like the first realization that I had, that I'm the closest in my life to Venezuela.
Yeah.
I wanted always to be here in this country, but I cannot go. So I started to talk with people, because a lot of people are from Venezuela living in Puerto Carreño. So my way was to talk with them and try to understand what is happening in the other country, but in the Colombian side, which is also kind of is also like Venezuela, because it's
It's so
like
close. Yeah.
it's close. So this was like the big wall, no, for the or limit for me, because once the first time I tried to cross, I went with a very small camera, with a Ricoh
Hmm.
star, this 28 millimeters, and with a friends, and you cannot say that you're a photographer. So um, they do a lot of checkpoints, and it's very dangerous for a Colombian and for a photographer. Not just because of the National Guard or the guerrillas, but also because of the people living at the towns, the Venezuelan side. They are very paranoid if you are from the intelligence of the state and you are taking pictures of the contraband or something, you know.
Mm.
So this is really, really, really tricky. Uh, this was like the dangerous thing, because
The
you don't.
dangerous in terms of people thinking that you're not just a photographer, you may be trying to capture the images for some other organization or a government or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably if I go like with a formal press, international, I don't know, with a carnet or something, is easier to have the permissions. But like the way I move is complicated, because you are one more from
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
from people, and it can be anything. It can be.
And
Uh,
when you're there, Juanita, and you're sort of in the mix capturing the images, which are fantastic, by the way. Are you traveling around alone? Are you with another person, or is it just you, just sort of out there doing your thing?
I travel all the time. I travel. I don't travel alone. I mean, I travel with people living there, and so that's
Hmm.
why I get too many time to make like relationships and friendships because I move with them. Let's say the boat driver is really a really close friend. So this is also a way of protecting myself and to know to get and to know better the region. But I'm always with them because I don't know how to drive a boat in these dangerous rapids. I don't know. I cannot. Anyone cannot go alone. Just the indigenous people and the fishermen.
Yeah.
But you cannot arrive alone by yourself. I mean, I live alone in terms of I don't live with my friends from the cities or with my family. In this sense, I am alone, but I build relationships, and after 1 or 2 months, I have plenty of close friends, which I really can trust
Yeah.
in them. Hmm.
Do you worry? And later in the interview, I want to talk about gear a little bit. But do you worry about the having expensive gear with you, and maybe having someone take it from you, or come get it when you're not attending to it? Are there those kind of safety concerns, or do you have that part covered?
No, no, no. This is not a safety concern about someone steal
Good,
your
good.
gear. No, I mean, if you go to Venezuela, that's why I don't go with the camera, with the biggest camera. I
Yeah,
go with the small one because
the
of
Rico. Yeah.
so something like this, they will steal from you. Even sometimes, once it was we had by the at the border, we had a persecution. We were by boat from Colombia, and the National Guard, la Guardia Nacional, um, they persecute us, and they wanted probably not the camera because they didn't see, but they wanted to take the motor of the
Oh.
boat.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so confiscate, confiscate.
Yeah.
They will bring it. So we were like quick going to the Colombian side to take a tree from the Colombian side, so they cannot take you.
Oh,
And they were
wow.
waiting there until we start again to move.
Hmm.
And once we start again to move, they came again and start the persecution to try to get something. But yeah, you can find these kind of things by river, so they can
Wow.
confiscate the motors or something.
What do you think? What would you say is the biggest challenge in creating this body of work that you hit? Was it the travel? Was it the security? What's the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome?
Mm. Um, Physically, in terms of logistic, uh,
Either logistics or technology or whatever.
yeah. In terms of I will start with the logistic, with the planning of the trip. It's very complicated that there is no commercial lines through the Orinoco. As I told you, there is commercial line through the Meta River to arrive to the Orinoco. But once you arrive to the Orinoco, there is no commercial lines that goes. So you cannot take a boat and go to the next community normal. You need to do a big organization to find the food and to hire
Hmm.
a motor man that can bring you and can cross the dangerous rapids, the Maipures rapids, which is like the sea. This is
Yeah.
really really dangerous. So I just met 3 persons that can drive through these rapids, and you really feel like a big storm in the middle of the sea.
Like a roller coaster, right? Yeah.
So this is really complicated. Sometimes you need to change the boat and to take it by land, and to take all the things by land. Because of the river. So it's like 300 kilometers, but you have to cross the most dangerous rapids at Orinoco. So this is complicated and very expensive, really expensive. So at the beginning, the tricky point was to find, when I didn't have like all the money and the resources to go. I was moving with the hospital brigades, with the health brigades, like that they were visiting communities. So I talked with them. I told them that I was a photographer and I needed to travel, but I didn't have the resources to do it. So they took me, and also a biologist also took me to one of these trips. So at the beginning it was harder to move for me because of this. In terms of the equipment, it's also really tricky because I'm not like the kind of photographer that really takes care about the equipment. So I have now a Sony 7-2R, and for me now it's like 3 years with me, but it seems like 15 years. After the first year, the camera was having troubles.
Yeah.
So this is really, really difficult because of the humidity, the dust, and this. And this part of the logistic, because the other big part of the work and challenges are the relationship with the communities and the different people, and especially the first time that you meet them. So you arrive to a different language, a community, and you arrive practically alone. I mean, you are not with an organization. You are not giving them a water solution system. Like it's normal. Like all kind of organizations arrive there, but you are a photographer and you want to tell their stories, and you need, with the first meeting, speak to all the community. And this happened to me. Like all the community was in a meeting in order that I explain them very clearly what I want to do there and why, and that was like challenging and very how to say, also very important to me, like to be able to explain and to convince them that they allow me to stay there. So and to follow their stories, and also to explain that I will not promise any educational solution, or you are not promised or money or nothing, but they need to tell the stories, no? So this was at the beginning challenging.
I can imagine. Yeah, I could.
Going.
Oh, keep going. Yeah.
Then you continue after the first time. You continue, because once you have this confidence, you start like to build a relationship. But at the first meeting, you are facing all, let's say, 50 different people from completely different culture than yours, and that they are seeing you like a very strange person, and trying to catch their interest and their love, their sympathy, their empathy. So this is
yeah, it's the, I can imagine, because you're a strange person, they're a stranger to them, and you have to gain their trust, and then you have to create the photographs, right? And you're not able to compensate them for the photographs, so there's even more trust that you're going to do the right thing. So that's you must have really sharp skills on gaining trust from people. That seems like that was probably, is in terms of logistics, that was one of the biggest issues, right? Just sort of gaining that trust so that you as a photographer could go in there and create these images, right?
I think this is like the strongest part of my career or my personality. Like first, I always had, and I always knew since my childhood that I had this possibility to make friends and to contact people. So this was in the first time when I arrived to the plains in 2007. I started my first project with women also in the plains with the Llaneros. The photography was not that. It was my first work, my first images. So the photos are not that interesting. But since the beginning, I had this connection and this possibility to get really deep inside people's lives. So that was like amazing, the way that this possibility opens so much.
Well, take us inside of that world. So when you're shooting and you're telling the stories photographically of these women and the challenges and the successes, what are some of the bigger challenges that they face living in that area, and sort of the story that you documented? Take us through that, the challenges and the hardships that they had to go through, or that they continue to go through.
Yeah. So let's talk about two territories. So one is like the border, like crossing the border along these 300 kilometers of Orinoco, and this is one part of my work. The other part of my work, in terms of geography, is the big town Puerto Carreño, so it's a port in the Colombian side. So in Puerto Carreño is really important for me. Almost half of the work is made, and I am based there in Puerto Carreño. Let's say like the difficult situation that I found in this town motivated me to start with a strong determination the story of women. So because as I told you, in all this world there are too many cultures, but there in Puerto Carreño is like a melting pot of different languages and cultures, and you can see it's not that big. It's not a city. It's like let's say 15,000 inhabitants, and you see that the people living at streets with drug problems and prostitution problems are indigenous people from one specific ethnia indigenous community called Amorua. So the Amorua. They are they were like the first inhabitants in all this region. They are the original inhabitants of this territory, and they are like the people suffering the most complicated consequences of the conflict. Not just the Venezuelan crisis. It's not because of the Venezuelan crisis. It's because of the abandonment, of the meeting with the colono culture. No, so you see at the streets. Girls from 10 years old, 12 years old into the prostitution and drugs, and from this ethnia. And this ethnia is supposed to be of one of the has like this risk of being in extinction. I don't know how to say in Colombia. Like they are. Finishing. There is not a big amount of these people in Colombia. So to see this, and I started to ask me and to ask people why is it possible that the woman and these girls are into this, and if you ask to the different institutions. Like the army, the institutions for the child called the Bienestar Familiar, the government, nobody wants to really talk about, because nobody is doing nothing for this. So this kind of the difficulties of the children, the women, was one of the biggest problems still. and it's not anything has changed.
Now, has the body of work or this project has it affected any change, bringing awareness to it? And I imagine this whole Fuji project will help bring some awareness and some traffic to this. But so far, have you seen any positive effects?
I think I cannot say like a direct positive effect. I mean, the effects that I've been that I noticed is that the publication of Orinoco, we did like 1,000 copies, and one of the goals for this publication is to distribute in the village of Puerto Carreño. So there is a lot of testimonies and chronics about all these different situations, especially about women, not just these Amorua girls, but also the Venezuelan migrants. And so it's like the impact that one inhabitant reads this and it's happening here in my village, and some awareness. No, but I think I didn't move yet so much the work. I think it's coming by the next years in order to catch like a more not just the interest, but really not just a small and short workshop to these girls, but really like to think about these solutions. Huh?
Yeah, no, I understand. So let's switch gears a little bit, and as we come to the end, I want to talk about the gear that we talked a little bit about, the Ricoh and the small cameras, and the challenges that you had with gear up to and including doing this project. What were your choices? Kind of explain like what was in your bag, like what are the pieces of gear that you chose to take with you to do this thing, the Fuji cameras, the lenses, and all that stuff, and why you made those choices.
I have the Sony 7 2R body, and I use it almost all the time with a 35 millimeter lens, with a very simple lens. I mean, it's a very short. It's like let me see. It's like that short.
Oh yeah, that is little. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is also great because it's not heavy at all. Before I was using in the first part of my work at the planes, I used a big Canon, like a Mark III, and then I switched to a Ricoh, and I used a Ricoh for like almost 2 years, and I was so happy to use just this Ricoh because I was able to really run by horse and not think at all of the camera.
Yeah.
And this was a great, like, in the middle of these two, like a good quality sensor. The sensor is great. And so, and I use sometimes, but very few times, for the portraits when I have like a more time, and this Leica.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
50.
That's a 50?
Yeah, it's a 50, 2.2. It's a 50, and that opens 2.
F2,
So,
okay.
Yeah, and I use a flash.
Okay. And that's it? That's what...
But I use it a lot. I use the flash up in the camera, not with any like cable, but just here.
Just right on the camera?
Yeah.
And while you're traveling around or around the up and down the river and all that, those are the things that are in your bag. Is that kind of those 2 cameras and those 2 lenses and a flash, and that's it, and you're able to get all that work.
Sometimes, some few times with a small tripod.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And then what do you use the tripod for mainly? To just landscape type shots, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Not just landscape, but kind of landscape with people.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. Wow. What that's the in a lot of ways the opposite of a lot of the conversations I have with photographers, because they go out and they have, 5 lenses, 3 camera bodies, a drone, 360 cameras and all this other stuff. And they still don't tell the story, right? And it's refreshing to see someone that is telling stories with just, the essential gear. And it's all about the story and the people and the trust and the connections versus, megapixels and new lenses and cameras and all this stuff. So that's fantastic. So what's next for Juanita? What's next on your list of things to do?
It has to be also with a question that you just did before, that how much this work impacted the situation of girls or women. And for me, the goal is I'm starting building or designing newspaper to be able to tell different stories about this region, and urgent stories that need to be told and need to be known, not just with the inhabitants, but with the governments, and to be able to catch more attention. So for me, this from the 2015 that I arrived to this project, to the Orinoco, until now, I just did the publication last year about women. This is like the first part, let's say, like the first, like the context.
Okay. Yeah. So setting the stage, kind of, right?
Now I will, the first stage. So now I will go deeper into different specific stories. And these specific stories or chronics, I'm planning to deliver it through this newspaper. And I hope that this newspaper, with the time, at least my big ambition is that this can develop into a communitarian newspaper, that these girls and women can be sensible to tell stories and can learn to tell stories, not just with me, but with different colleagues, and be able, this newspaper opens in a more educational process, and to involve all this population that
I love that
connected to.
Yeah, that is fantastic. So you've got a lot of work to do, Juanita. So if people want to see this work, obviously we've got photos on Photographer and on thisweekinphoto.com, etc. But if people want to connect with you directly, what's a good place for them to go to see this body of work and maybe reach out to you and communicate with you?
I think the best thing is through the email. And if you put Orinoco, Juanita Escobar, some articles will come out, and it's easy to reach me. But the best for me is the email.
Okay, email. Yeah. Okay, and we'll list your email.
In Colombia and in many places in Latin America, I have the publication of the book, which is it's the book that it's the book that we did with the founders of the Magnum Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So this book
is beautiful.
And yes, I have many copies in Latin America for the distribution. Also in the US, I have some. But yes, it's with the contacting me.
Okay, so just basically through email, and I'll list your email in the blog post for this, and it'll also be listed on photographic.com as well. Juanita Escobar, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Frederick.
This is fantastic, and congratulations on all the work that you're doing out there. That's, like I said, that you're doing real photography. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for telling.
Meet you personally once.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I would love that. And just the, it's hard to get across. I read the piece, and I would encourage people that are watching this to read the piece and look at the images, because it's hard to get your brain around all the things that you had to do and the issues that you were shining a light on down there. The prostitution and all the other hardships that you as a photographer had to not only photograph, like you were saying, gain the trust of your subjects, photograph them, but also stay out of harm's way at the same time with all the different challenges and the, everything. So it's fantastic what you're doing. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. We will be in touch, and good luck with everything. We'll see you soon.
Good luck. See you. Ciao.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay. This is TWIP.